I want you to imagine a place on Earth that is just utterly alien. Picture a silent, pitch-black abyss literally 3 miles beneath the surface of the Pacific Ocean. Down here, the water is freezing, and it's a completely hostile environment for us humans. But right now, through all that deep silt and darkness, blinding LED headlights are suddenly flashing on. A hidden industrial war is beginning, and the prize? Well, it's going to fundamentally rewrite global power. So, let's dive into it.
You might be wondering, what on earth is driving superpowers to send massive robotic machines down into the abyss? Well, it's a staggering number. The ocean floor holds a prize of critical battery metals estimated to be worth $9 trillion. To put that into perspective, that is more than double the size of the entire German economy. Whoever controls these metals basically controls the future of green energy.
Section 1. The trillion-dollar abyss. The prize at the bottom of the world.
We are talking specifically about an area called the Clarion-Clipperton Zone. It stretches all the way between Mexico and Hawaii. And the conditions down here? Absolutely extreme. The water exerts a brutal, crushing pressure of 600 atmospheres. That is a force so strong it would instantly flatten a standard military submarine like a cheap soda can. But our target down here are these things called polymetallic nodules. Think of them as strange, potato-sized battery stones just sitting there, completely unattached on the ocean floor. Every single one slowly grows around a tiny core, sometimes even a fossilized tooth from a prehistoric shark. For industrial powers, these million-year-old rocks are literally the ultimate cheat code. See, unlike land mining, where you have to dig through mountains of earth and deal with tons of toxic waste, these porous nodules just rest right on the mud. They offer a zero solid waste profile.
And these unbelievable rocks form through 2 completely separate chemical pathways. First, you've got hydrogenetic growth, which slowly, and I mean slowly, pulls iron and cobalt directly from the cold water over millions of years. Meanwhile, diagenetic growth works up to 10 times faster, pulling manganese, nickel, and copper right up from the sediment pore water below. Together, these 2 processes create this incredibly rich chemical matrix. And guess what? It perfectly matches the exact feedstock needed for the high-capacity NMC batteries running our electric vehicles today. Talk about hitting the jackpot.
Moving on to Section 2. Surviving the deep. Engineering the abyss.
Now, to actually claim these rocks, we have to overcome some truly incredible physics. Traditional steel, it simply buckles under 600 bar of uniform compressive force. So engineers have to design deep-sea armor to survive 8,500 psi of pressure. They do this by using 80mm thick solid titanium spheres, completely fused together using highly precise electron beam welding. To make sure there are absolutely no microscopic flaws, because even one could be catastrophic, the seams undergo massive 7.5 MeV X-ray radiography checks. And here's a wild detail. You can't use empty air tanks for buoyancy down there because they'd crush instantly. Instead, vehicles are packed with advanced synthetic foam. Think of it like ultra-dense, indestructible bubble wrap containing millions of hollow glass microspheres that keep their shape under all that immense force.
Okay, so once the vehicles are heavily armored, how do they actually mine this stuff? Well, we're currently seeing 2 very different philosophies. First, there's the bulldozer approach. This uses heavy, 35-ton subsea crawlers like the Pitania 2 and Kai 202. These are massive, wild pieces of machinery that spread their weight over the super soft mud using really wide tracks. They blast the seabed with water jets and drills to vacuum up the nodules. But, as you can imagine, this creates immense sediment plumes in the process. On the flip side, startups like Impossible Metals are developing what's called the hovering robot approach. Their Eureka drones autonomously hover just above the seabed. They use specialized robotic arms to selectively pluck the nodules, which aims to keep the environmental impact as low as possible.
But hey, just picking up the rocks is only half the battle, right? To get them 3 miles straight up to the surface, the whole system has to work flawlessly. Once a crawler gathers the nodules, they're sent to a heavy buffer station resting on the seabed. This station separates out the thick clay and regulates the flow. Now, it connects to the crawler via a highly flexible underwater jumper hose. This is actually a brilliant engineering trick because it isolates the crawler's movement from the main lifeline, which is a rigid 4.5-kilometer vertical steel riser pipe. This massive pipe, which is constantly battling intense ocean drag, then pumps a fast slurry of rock and seawater all the way up to a converted drill ship on the surface.
This brings us to Section 3, the geopolitical battlefield, the race for the Clarion-Clipperton Zone.
So, with global demand for critical minerals projected to spike by 4 to 6 times by 2040, superpowers are frankly desperate to secure these supplies and avoid any supply chain choke points. This scramble has turned international waters into a highly tense legal gray zone. Enter the International Seabed Authority, or ISA, which manages permits for these international waters. Currently, China has aggressively positioned state-run giants like Comra to hold 5 separate exploration contracts. That is the largest share of deep-sea mining territory held by any single nation. By locking down the seabed now, China aims to bypass land-based jurisdictions entirely and shield itself from future resource embargoes.
But what about the United States? Interestingly, the US is actually not a member of the ISA. Back in the 1970s, many in the US government completely rejected the whole idea of the UN declaring deep-sea resources the common heritage of humanity. Historically, there's been this strong sentiment that the US Navy has high seas freedom and simply doesn't need international permission. Because of this dynamic, American corporations, like the Metals Company, are now attempting to bypass the slow international framework altogether by filing under domestic US mining codes.
And you know what's crazy? The global regulatory gridlock was recently totally shattered by a tiny Pacific island. Nauru invoked this obscure legal clause called the 2-year rule. Think about that for a second. A tiny island effectively held the power to trigger a global corporate gold rush. This forced the ISA to rapidly consider commercial mining applications, even without a finished global regulatory code in place, which plunged the entire industry into a chaotic rush for commercial permits.
Section 4. The Hidden Military Agenda. Dual Use in the Dark.
Now this is where the story gets deeply strategic, because this multi-billion-dollar race for green battery metals actually hides a massive military secret. The advanced heavy machinery used to map the plains for mining, it serves a very powerful dual purpose for national defense. See, while surveying for nodules, these vessels also map out the ocean's thermocline layers. These are underwater temperature bands that actually bounce sound. They record highly accurate sound speed profiles. And why does that matter? Because this data allows nuclear submarines, like the American Virginia-class or the Chinese Type 096, to effectively hide from enemy sonar grids. Survey ships are also dropping advanced benthic acoustic sensors straight into the abyssal chasms to record the unique acoustic signatures of passing warships. This feeds directly into massive defense networks like China's underwater Great Wall. If we look at the actual logs of state-owned oceanographic ships like the Hong 01, we see a pretty striking pattern. Just 6% of their time is spent inside designated mining zones. A staggering 94% of their operations involve crisscrossing strategic military choke points around Taiwan, Japan, and Guam. So the abyssal plain isn't just a mine, it's a very critical theater for 21st century undersea warfare.
Section 5. The Environmental Gamble, Sacrificing the Abyss. With all this intense geopolitical and military momentum building, we really have to pivot to the ultimate dilemma here, the staggering environmental cost of disturbing this completely untouched alien ecosystem. The abyssal plain is incredibly fragile. Down in the total darkness, microscopic animals actually communicate using flashes of light in these complex bioluminescent ecosystems. Plus, the deep ocean is vital for the planet's chemistry. It literally buries and stores about 25% of our carbon emissions. And, much like the rainforest, this extreme environment is yielding incredible medical discoveries. For example, marizomib, a drug derived from deep-sea bacteria that is right now in clinical trials for treating aggressive brain cancer.
Deep-sea microbiologists like Dr. Beth Orchid offer a very stark warning about all of this. Those heavy 35-ton subsea crawlers don't just carefully pick up rocks, they stir up immense sediment plumes that can choke out life for miles around. And because this specific ecosystem grows at a painfully microscopic pace, scientists are warning that the destruction will be irreversible. As Dr. Orchid points out, we have zero evidence, none, that we can offset this damage. The impact, she says, will be permanent. So, we really have to ask ourselves, do we actually need these ocean metals? Well, according to reports produced for the ISA itself, the amount of copper we'd pull from the Pacific by 2035 would cover barely 1% of global energy transition demand. Just look at the volume comparison. The massive mountain of metal that we simply throw away and fail to recycle every single year, it completely dwarfs the meager volume of metals we expect to drag up from the deep sea over the next decade. It's kind of crazy when you think about it.
Furthermore, battery technology is rapidly shifting as we speak. The market share of lithium iron phosphate, or LFP batteries, is absolutely exploding. And the kicker? These batteries require exactly zero cobalt and zero nickel. Those are the exact metals superpowers are currently racing to the bottom of the ocean to find. It's deeply ironic. We might be rushing to permanently destroy an ancient underwater ecosystem for a technology that could literally be obsolete in just a few short years.
Which leaves us with a profound dilemma. Proponents of the mining argue that we just cannot delay the transition to cleaner energy, and that we will only truly understand the environmental impacts by observing commercial-scale operations firsthand. But history tells us that once billions of dollars are invested and massive machines hit the seafloor, turning back becomes nearly impossible. So I'll leave you with this to consider. As we race to save our planet's atmosphere, are we willing to permanently sacrifice its deepest, darkest frontier to do it? Should we mine the deep seas? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.